Kia ora. My name is Shane Brun and I am the founder and coordinator for New Zealand's only charity dedicated exclusively to medicinal cannabis. Our country has the unfortunate distinction of having the most expensive medicinal cannabis in the world, which is Sativex, and that's primarily due to our remote geographic location. Our organisation has initially been based around patient advocacy and the quest for more affordable products, primarily from Canada. However, as our country grapples with regulations around loosening access to medicinal cannabis and domestic production, our organisation has delved into political advocacy. Our first thing we'd like to cover off is the Schedule 4 products, which are those that have been assessed as having no reasonable therapeutic purpose due to their high risk. We feel that cannabis flower, the only risks are associated with the fact that it's primarily smoked, and due to its relatively low potency, particularly compared to resins, that the risk is actually relatively benign, especially when we compare it to other controlled drugs such as the fentanyl lollipops and 3-day patches that are available that aren't in Schedule 4. So as we discussed, the main health hazards are actually around the smoking of it, and that can be remedied by vaporizing. In fact, our country, New Zealand, has a goal to be smoke-free by 2025, and as we look to loosen access to medicinal cannabis, we're going to have to aggressively promote vaporizing and regulate for that eventuality. We also feel that cannabis resin is quite a loose term, and even the high THC concentrates, which of all cannabis products pose the most risk, they are used quite successfully, particularly in palliative care where there's no long-term concerns. We also feel that as the cannabis is a broad spectrum, particularly between high THC plants and high CBD ones, that the CBD products such as CBD resins shouldn't be treated the same as the high THC resins. So we need a new way of defining cannabis without resorting to defining the isolates. Most of the products going forward and what patients want worldwide is those that have the entourage effect, and the evidence clinically is starting to trend towards that as well. So when we talk about the spectrum of effects, this is the visual guide we've been using for politicians in New Zealand, and the highest risk products are the knock your socks off pure THC ones, which can actually be fairly unpleasant to use in a recreational setting, all the way through to high CBD products which have only a trace of THC and are relatively benign. So we want to look at CBD products initially, and they're a great demonstration of this entourage effect. So the high CBD products that have a trace of THC with a ratio roughly of 1 to 20, they're becoming ubiquitous in the use for pediatric epilepsy. So in Colorado, California, Canada and Israel, they're all using products with roughly that ratio. Counter to this, Epidiolex is a pure CBD product with no measurable amount of THC, and this was mainly for cultural barriers. However, when we're looking at all the trial data, the doses of CBD required for Epidiolex are orders of magnitude larger than for these 1 to 20 products, so it's significantly less effective. So we also look at the abuse potential. It's got a little bit of THC in it. However, we do know that CBD counteracts much of the negative effects of the THC. So when we talk about a 1 to 20 product, we would argue that nutmeg poses a greater health risk. And in fact, nutmeg was banned in Saudi Arabia for this very reason. Moving away from the epilepsy side of things, the Israelis have also done a great study demonstrating that a whole plant high CBD extract was much more effective than a pure CBD extract when they were looking at an animal model of inflammation. We then move on to what's the most common in the Western world, which is the balanced products, particularly in the guise of Sativex, which has the biggest export market of all the products, but then the emerging ones particularly from Canadian companies that are really similar. The trials for Sativex show that the psychoactivity is quite low, and in fact only 2.2% of people reported a degree of euphoria, and if they were asked to score that euphoria, it would pale into comparison with the products more designed for recreational purposes. And in fact, in New Zealand, we managed to get a media personality to try Sativex at a larger dose, and it could be best described as unpleasant. Virtually all the harms that we know about cannabis is resulting from the chronic use of high THC cannabis that's been rapidly absorbed, particularly by smoking. So when we talk about the long-term effect of these balanced and high CBD products, the truth is some of them haven't been around long enough for us to truly know. However, we do know that it's significantly different. It's an apples to oranges comparison. If we were to use the same comparisons with the opioids, we'd be talking about the harms of opioids being established through the smoking of raw opium versus what's being used in the medical space, which would be slow-release codeine and morphine. And we've noted that as therapeutic use becomes more dominant, the legitimate patients tend towards higher CBD products. So while America has issues with high THC products and concentrates, much of the world is moving to balanced products and in fact even high CBD products. In New Zealand, we have illicit growers growing what is in effect industrial hemp with low THC compounds just for its medicinal purposes, and they're still being prosecuted by the police. So we propose a granular approach to cannabis preparations. We have schedules 1 to 3, and they already have a sliding scale, which is perfectly demonstrated with high-risk opioids down to schedule 3, where the codeine compounds are when they are a secondary compound in an analgesic over the counter. So we propose that high THC products, whether it's flower, resin, oils, or tinctures, they could conceivably remain in schedule 1 as they do pose a higher risk. But the balanced to high CBD products, we think they should be transferred to Schedule 2. And in addition to that, the high CBD products that have a tiny amount of THC, perhaps setting a limit of around 1 milligram, we could carve out a definition in Schedule 3 so that they could be over-the-counter medicines in many jurisdictions, echoing the availability of codeine-based analgesics when it's used as a second compound. So in New Zealand, we have Panadine, which is a paracetamol codeine mix. We could foreseeably have CBD, THC products used the same way there. So we'd be looking at 1 to 20 ratio products for that. So in summary, we'd like to see the Schedule 4 definition scrapped for cannabis entirely, and we want to break it down into cannabis strengths when we classify these products so that we can recognize the entourage effect and that isolates aren't as ideal. Thank you very much for your time.